Yes, you're still on to the economy today, and now we want to head straight to the interview segment. And today on the interview segment, I'm sure you must have heard about the supplementary budget submitted by the President to the National Assembly that has been passed by both the lower House of Assembly and also the upper chamber. That's the 2.73 billion trillion naira, that was meant for the supplementary budget. Now, the government cited wages for for the federal government workers and also state workers, and also some form of palliative. So, because of that is why they are seeking for that amount. Now, we want to look into the nitty-gritty of that amount. Why that amount and what it foretells for Nigeria, and how that we are going to raise that kind of money, to finance a country that is already begging. Naira is already at its begging knees. So I have with me in the studio to discuss this a lawyer, that's Okenna Nnebedum, who is going to give us more light or shed more light into what that actually means. You're welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So, Okenna, let's. The administration started off May 28, just kick starts, like the president said, we'll keep the ground running. And all of a sudden, we've had the dollar nosedive in a record time, over the years to 1,000 plus, to the dollar. And it is crazy at the moment. Everything has skyrocketed. And again, now that the government is supposed to be cutting down on costs, they're getting more loan, getting, to get more money, buying more vehicles for those in the Senate, buying even for the executive, and which is really alarming. So what is your take on the new supplementary budget? Was it necessary? Is it necessary? Is it something we actually need at this time?
Well, thank you once again. I want to say that although jokingly, it looks as though all the indices you pointed out were waiting for the president to hit the road running, and they ran after the president. For example, the dollar, they started running after the president since he's on the run. I don't know, running to nowhere. He has a 4-year tenure. It is good to hit the road running, but running to where? And how would you be running? You are running on a track that is already mapped out, or are you creating your own track? Because part of what to look as though you are creating your own track are the indulgences which the supplementary budget is going to cater for. And if you ask me, the answer to that question is needless. Those contents in that supplementary budget are needless. That is my personal opinion. And also because I'm a citizen here who know one or two things about allocation of scarce resources in times like this. The office of the presidency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria doesn't need those indulgences. Only yesterday, while speaking to some section of military establishments, the officer in charge of national security, the national security advisor in the person of Malam Nnebedum, speaking to the defense apparatus, he said that they inherited almost a bankrupt country. So the next question you ask is, the little scarce resources that we're able to muster through loans, though, you want to spend it on personal indulgences. It is the height of insensitivity to, renovate the office of the First Lady, which is unconstitutional. The last time I checked, there's nothing like the office of the First Lady in our constitution. To renovate the office of the Vice President, to renovate Dodon Barracks, and to buy a yacht. All those are personal indulgences that adds not to our GDP. The worst case scenario? a situation where, like you mentioned, they are importing vehicles to service according to them, the logistics needs of the legislators who, according to reports, they said that they needed such vehicles because of the uniqueness of the Nigerian roads. And buttressing it further, they said that the Nigerian roads are not motorable. Is that not an indictment on your regime? On May 29th, 2023, there was a succession of APC regime handing over to another APC regime. So you can't tell me that we are not part of the regime that has kept us bankrupt. So what are we expecting from this regime? Is it to put us into more debt? Of course, between May 29th, on that day, standing on a podium from Eagle Square, the reckless announcement was made, where they tried to justify as saying that he's brave. Brevity, sometimes, is not a show of wisdom. It is very good that you determine direction than speed. Put it another way, take it from me. Direction is far better than speed. Because if you are speeding to the wrong direction, it is at your detriment, and at the detriment of those who are your passengers. So if you have the office of the presidency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria being manned by a driver who lives recklessly, who spends recklessly, and who flouts the Constitution, with the first element of appropriations being made from that office sounding and looking this way, it is unimaginable what you will see in 2024 appropriation.
Now, what you said just, it just...
Let that sink. But there are realities.
But let's look at it now. Let's look at this now. We have an upper chamber. We have a lower chamber, the Senate and the lower chamber, which is the National Assembly. And there was a reading before this, a report that was sent to this upper and the lower chamber of to actually assess it before it was passed. And this was passed. Now, knowing fully well that, yes, Nigeria was actually in bankruptcy, or was left into bankruptcy one way or the other by some of the, findings that was made. Why should we have a Senate approving such a supplementary budget of such a magnitude amount? And where is Nigeria going to get that amount from? Because already we are not actually making money. We all know that. It is everything we have been getting since the past 8 years going to another 4 years going to, that's, have been on loans, which we've been financed, we have been trying to pay off or trying to service. So where is Nigeria going to get the funding from? Are we still going to be loaning? Why is the National Assembly backing this kind of reckless movement?
I was going to say that the answer to your question is in the public space, because politics is the biggest business in Nigeria. We ain't producing nothing. The little we are producing are not enough to sustain our rising profile, our rising population, and to even service our budgets. Are you aware that our budget is funded from the little leftover servicing of loans? And you saw the flouting of the CBN Act by the CBN itself, and it got to a point that the federal government was borrowing money from the CBN, which is quite illegal. It's an institution of illegality. At a point, they had to, find a way to, bring it into ways and means and all whatnot. I can tell you, when a country decides to indulge itself in illegality and politicization of every fabric of the institution of democracy, that country has a predictable future. It is the Venezuelan end. Yes. Nobody should raise a surprise. It is by choice that we have the best of us jackpot this country when the worst of us find themselves within the corridors of power, and you don't expect them to make laws that will better our lot, except to service their indulgences. For example, what you mentioned. What do you need a 260 million or 230 million vehicle when your constituents are living in poverty? And are you witnessing a trend in this country that poverty has been weaponized to weaken the people in such a way that individuals are assuming the role of the institutions of state, while the institutions of state are being killed on daily basis? For example, where are the water corporations? When you can see along the streets, you see an up tank, or you see one or two of such infrastructures raised, and with an emblem marking it constituency project by Honorable this or Senator this.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you now. So, we'll go for a very short break and I'll be right back. You know, he's really giving some details that are a bit this happening. We'll come back. Welcome back. You're still on to TET, the economy today. We're looking at the supplementary budget submitted by the president, that's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to the National Assembly that has been passed now for 2023, a 2.17 billion naira supplementary budget, and all the things in it, if it is necessary and not necessary. Now, what you are seeing now, you know, it makes all the sense, but then it all has to do with the Constitution. It has to do, what does the Constitution say? Has the law or has the administration been following the Constitution, even the National Assembly, to passing this kind of, will I say, is it policies or laws, you know, passing this kind of laws when the country itself, the economy of the country is actually on a nosedive?
The Constitution, if it will benefit our audience, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has the provisions for state directives and the public principles of direction of state. It captures the real essence of what our goal is, what our motto is, and what shall be the fact that the legislature should make laws for the good governance, progress, and wealth of the Nigerian state. The big questions are that it has been a lingering jurisprudential issue whether that particular chapter of the Nigerian Constitution is justiciable. My brother, I will announce to you, unfortunately, it has been outlawed that that section is not justiciable. You can't hold anybody responsible if the directive principle of state policy is not justiciable in court, and it is the bane of our development. That constitutional. I also want to answer your question that requests for my opinion. Why would the National Assembly approve such appropriations when it is not in agreement with the directive principle of state in our constitution? I tell you why. It goes back to politics. Politics of give me, I give you. Rub my back, I rub your back. You know, they have before them for approval the allocation of those vehicles and allocation of some other allowances, mind-blowing allowances. You remember the newspaper allowance, you remember the laundry allowance, you remember the constituency tea, coffee, and all those entertainment allowances. They've been playing those down in the press. And in the midst of all those, if you approve the appropriation budget in that wise, we will also approve the fact that you are going to send close to more than $500 million of our money outside the country to go and better the economy of Japan, those building the Toyota that you are importing. But we have car manufacturing, vehicle manufacturing companies in Nigeria, from start to finish. You also have the assembly ones also. And they are servicing the road and the transport infrastructure in Nigeria. But if you don't consider it a priority, that you should lessen your import and increase your export in order to make the Naira compete favorably with the USD, you will not be said to have loved the Nigerian people or to be patriotic enough to be elected into whichever office you occupy at the federal level. And that is the benchmark with which we should judge, or with which we should even evaluate this present regime, whether they are in tandem with the present realities. If, in essence, you agree that you met a lean purse when you assumed office on May 29th, then it should reflect in the kind of indulgences. It will reflect in the fact that you should tighten your belt and not ask Nigerians to make sacrifices. You should make sacrifices. For the first time, we had expected that the National Assembly and the presidency should order vehicles from the local manufacturers, such that such humongous amount, over $5.67 billion being spent abroad, importing money, should be spent in this country, such that it will increase the production capacity of the local manufacturers of vehicles. It will increase employment of labor. It will increase our GDP. If you take out such huge amount of money out of our economy to better the lives and the economy of another country, you are not patriotic. Some of these offenses or some of these behaviors should rather be treasonable offenses in this country, but they are not. It is the wrong people who sit down to make laws. You don't expect them to make laws that will offend what services their indulgences.
So what you're trying to say is that our laws are not morally guided.
There is morality in law, but law is not morality. You should understand that. But as soon as you begin to see in a society where their laws don't reflect the expectations of the ordinary man on the street, there are some element of morality, then the country is heading to become a failed state.
The country is heading to become a failed state. I'm really a bit, shaken by.
No, we just have to tell ourselves the truth. We just have to tell ourselves the truth.
I look at it
in this way, we will not achieve much, except and until we bring down the bureaucracy. We'll cut down the costs of this democracy. It is killing us. It is not helping us. If you would get into a car you have not driven prior to your ascendancy to that throne, I challenge them. 360 of them are in the House of Reps, and 109 of them are in the Senate. Several of them at this election, in this season, we are first-timers in both chambers. Several of them have not driven that kind of vehicle in their fleet. I can challenge them. Some who have, or some who participate genuinely to add to the society, they don't have the moral courage to reject those vehicles, when in actual fact your constituents are living in abject poverty. Tell me how you will arrive a village square with a vehicle that they know costs this much, and you wouldn't be stoned if they're hungry. A day is coming in this country, like Oshomole prophesied, that when the poor don't see anything to eat, they will eat the rich.
Well, I hope we don't arrive there something one day or the other.
But it's predictable.
Let's look at the solutions now. We need to start looking at profile solutions, even though we don't know whether the government will
to implement.
Actually,
first of all, we had expected that in the person of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria at the moment, haven't seen his trajectory, haven't seen all his, his background and his exposure to power since the struggle for June 12 and all those, one would have expected that he has nothing to lose if he stands with the Nigerian people to do some drastic, when I mean drastic, some drastic changes. For example, to prepare, either by executive order or to prepare an executive bill to the National Assembly, that the principles or directive policy of states should be justiciable. That is number one. Challenge the government when you don't see us implementing the Constitution. That is one. Then with this Appropriation Act, remove the office of the First Lady from any expenditures because it is unconstitutional. And then provide a soft landing for the citizenry. For example, if you cut the cost of governance, what you are spending on legislators, move it to, funding, partial funding, I say, like grants to all those modular refineries. They will produce, they will refine, and they will service local consumption. It will reduce drastically the exposure of the Naira chasing after dollars for importation of refined petroleum products. If you start on this pedestal, it will show a reflection at least that someone is coming from amongst us who have been through the thick and thin, who it was his desire, lifelong ambition to rule Nigeria. Not to achieve an ambition that is selfish for himself, but an ambition that will reflect the fact that this has been one of us. And his policies are truly the policies that makes the poor breathe.
You just mentioned that the president is not alone in all of these fights. And what we have come to understand is that he makes, yes, there's a decision. There are a lot of appointments. In fact, this cabinet
but the president makes such appointments. He provides leadership. In answer to your question,
who gives him the
advice?
The advice.
Remember, we had a president in this country who said, I employ you to give me advice, but I'm not mandated to take your advice. It is a direction you chart for your appointees that they will all take a cue. Exactly. He should provide leadership. When you provide leadership, everybody falls in line. That is what I'm saying. If it is not important as that office of the president of the country, and you excuse it off like the appointees, we're not alone, the judiciary is there, it is the legislature is there, I just have to allow the three arms of government to do this and that, this is my duty and that is not my duty, and all those. If you do that, you are living in excuses, you're living in denials. In fact, it is from this APC regime, during the past regime of President Buhari, that we started hearing about body language and all those things. Where are those body language now? They should start from body language. If your body language smells, profligacy, people under you will copy. You remember when the first time the Minister for Federal Capital Territory appeared on duty, I think he went to office for the first time, people were observatory enough to notice the vehicle that he drove to, that drove him to office that particular day, and they rated the vehicle and they put up the cost on social media. Is this the regime that will fight poverty with that kind of convoy?